actually 3 years ago today, I was on set of American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, you're
So it's
kidding.
kind of ironic. Yeah, I was just doing all the B-roll and interviews. So it's kind of wild to think that that was 3 years ago. And the really cool thing about that, what God did with that journey, was it was a huge dream of mine. But I had, broken my back out of college. In a car accident, I wasn't active for 14 years. So I had this whole comeback. So to even get on that show as one of the top athletes in the country was like insane. Completely gave my life to Christ. I healed my back. The back, they told me that shouldn't heal. I had injuries where there's no way I should be tumbling and flying in the air and doing what I'm doing today. But I'm completely healed and I'm doing everything they told me I'm not supposed to be able to do. And then, I get on American Ninja Warrior where there's 70,000 people that apply and I get picked as one of the few hundred to be out there. And then gymnastics, I now am making history. I did the Omnathon, which was all 14 gymnastics events. As the oldest gymnast to ever do that. So if you look at my resumes, I am the unlikely leader. I feel so lucky that he chose me to show the world what is possible when we believe and have faith. And you truly can accomplish anything you set your mind to. And all those excuses we use, you just have to put them to the side and let him do his work through you.
Welcome to The Unlikely Leader, where we celebrate how God turns life's greatest setbacks into powerful comebacks. I'm your host, Kara Rapp, educator, author, and believer that God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. This podcast was born from my book, The Unlikely Leader, where I share how God doesn't always call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Each episode, you'll hear from guests who faced obstacles, hardships, and detours, but found God's hand guiding them through every turn. Their stories will remind you that even when life feels off course, God is still writing your comeback story. Well, hello, and welcome to The Unlikely Leader. We are coming up on springtime in New York, and I love spring. Spring tells a story. And our guest on the podcast today, she has a story similar to spring of rebirth of sorts. Her name is Angela Fuller. She's a wife, a mom, an adult gymnast, American Ninja Warrior competitor, fitness instructor, and speaker. At age 45, she's living proof that it's never too late to begin again. Please welcome to the podcast, Angela Fuller. Hi, Angela.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
So excited that you're here. So excited to hear your story. You have just quite a testimony, and we're going to get into all of that. But first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm in Colorado, so it is actually currently snowing here.
Oh, we've had enough of that in New York. No more. You can keep it all there in Colorado. Well, we're really excited to have you, and I can't wait to chat today and hear all about your testimony. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and in what capacity you're currently leading or serving, and then we'll kind of get into all those different aspects of your testimony.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm a full-time fitness instructor here in Colorado. So that's actually the biggest area where, God's using my gifts. I absolutely love teaching women. Especially I do dance fitness, which is Zumba dance fitness. And then I do like a HIIT boot camp style class. And I just love it. Most of my women, most of them are women, all age ranges. And, as somebody who has really struggled in the past with self-love and identity and losing their sparkle, I get to help these women and, just encourage them to love themselves and give them that hour of a gift to themselves, when they come into my classes. So that's the biggest area I serve others. But I also do speaking, talking about my story and sharing what God's done in my life. But yeah, I'm also a mother to 2 teenage boys and a wife. But yeah, and then I also train as a full-time, I'm a competitive gymnast, and then I also do ninja training. And like you said, I was on the show a few years ago, but I continue to train that. So I train as an athlete pretty much full-time as well.
So you're not busy at all.
No.
Not at all. Even one of those things would be a lot, but all of
Yeah.
them on your plate, you are definitely you're a busy lady. That I just think that's so interesting that you were on American Ninja Warrior. Can we shift for a minute so you can just tell us about
Yeah.
that because that sounds like a really cool experience.
Yes, and the cool thing is actually 3 years ago today, I was on set of American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, you're
So it's
kidding.
kind of ironic. Yeah, I was just doing all the B-roll and interviews. So it's kind of wild to think that that was 3 years ago. And the really cool thing about that, what God did with that journey was it was a huge dream of mine. But I had, broken my back out of college. In a car accident, I wasn't active for 14 years. So I had this whole comeback. So to even get on that show as one of the top athletes in the country was like insane. And most of the competitors are in, 15 years old now. So that was huge. It took 4 years to get on that show. So you apply every year and did not hear anything, but I knew God put that dream in my heart for a reason. So I just kept chasing that dream. And then but every no was hard, right? But I just knew it. And my best friend who inspired the American Ninja Warrior dream had terminal breast cancer. And I really wanted her to be on my sideline. And so the night before I got the phone call, I prayed and was like, God, please, if you're going to put me on the show, will you now so she can be there? And he did. The next day, I got the
Mhm.
phone call to be on American Ninja Warrior. And so she was on my sideline. And it was just beautiful. And so yeah, that was sorry, I'm like getting emotional thinking about it because it's like what he does is so amazing. And then 8 months later,
Yeah.
she passed away. So
Oh,
um so yeah, she was on my sideline being on the show. It was really cool too because I remember so the night I was on the show, you compete in the middle of the night. I didn't run the course till 2:30 in the morning and it was sleeting rain, 38 degrees, and it was very apparent that I was not going to be going through the whole course. I wasn't going to be hitting the buzzer, right? People are falling right and left. And God's so good because I had instant peace of like, hey, I brought you here. Winning was getting on the stage, Angela. And I was like, that was really hard for me as an athlete. So I'm like, no, winning to me is hitting the buzzer. And so he was so great. And when I did fall in the water and I got out, I had the biggest smile. And I was just thanking everybody for having me there. And I'll never forget, they were like, oh, we're still airing you because they don't air everybody. And because I didn't do well, I thought I'm not going to even be on the show. And they're like, we're airing you. You had the best attitude. This is so awesome. Like, and then it was so cool. I come home from the show and the news and everybody's contacting me. And I'm like, I didn't really do much on the show, but I was on it. And they're like, we don't care. Like, you are at the time a 43-year-old woman on American Ninja Warrior. Like, you're such an inspiration. You shouldn't even be able to do what you're doing. And so it was such a beautiful moment. And then also in the tent that night on the show, a lot of people didn't do well. And I got to be the light in that tent and help these other athletes process that like there's so much more to life than winning. You have to look at the whole journey and just being able to be there.
I love that. And that
So
is like they say, like life is, it's like 10% of what happens to you, but 90% of how you react to it. And you reacted so positively. But what I really love about your story and what really resonated with me was that it really hit the mark on the theme of my book that I wrote, which is The Unlikely Leader. And it talks about how God uses the unlikely to accomplish great things. So, can you talk about how in that experience, you really were you stepped out as this kind of unlikely leader. Maybe you weren't, in your early 20s or in the, prime of your life, but you have this comeback story. So can you talk a little bit about that and what led up to it?
yes, and I love the title of your book, and I love the title of your book. 100% explains my
Thank you.
story because I was the underdog girl, right? I wasn't even that great of a gymnast. I was an athlete, but I never was anything. I don't want to use the word special, but I don't know, growing up, I was actually really shy and quiet my whole life. I kind of changed in college, but I definitely was very unlikely. I mean, right out of college after that car accident, and then, being told by a doctor you're completely done and not doing anything for 14 years. Like, truly, in my mind, I'm just gonna, not saying just be a mom, but I'm just going to be a mom. And this is going to be my life now. And God actually came to me. I was saved I had a really low moment when I had postpartum depression where I did not want to be here anymore. And he came to me and I saw a bright light. His hand came down and he said, I have big plans for you. And literally from that day forward, I was baptized right away, completely gave my life to Christ. I healed my back. The back they told me that shouldn't heal. I had injuries where there's no way I should be tumbling and flying in the air and doing what I'm doing today. But I'm completely healed and I'm doing everything they told me I'm not supposed to be able to do. And then, I get on American Ninja Warrior where there's 70,000 people that apply and I get picked as one of the few hundred to be out there. Um, and then gymnastics, I now am making history. I did the Omnathon, which was all 14 gymnastics events as the oldest gymnast to ever do that. So if you look at my resume, I am the unlikely leader. I'm the unlikely hero. There is nothing about my story that says I should be doing what I'm doing today, but through his grace and his love, um, that's why I'm here.
That's amazing, and I love that you credit him, just like the Bible says, all things, through him are possible, and he gave you that gift. And so that's another thing that the book kind of touches on, just how we're all believers are given spiritual gifts, unique God-given gifts, and you are certainly using yours. And nothing can thwart his purpose or calling. So you have this car accident and you think this dream of yours is has gone up in smoke, and
Yep.
here you are now, making records and just accomplishing things that you never thought you could. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like I actually cried at my last meet that I had on Sunday because there are no age divisions and I'm competing against kids half my age and I'm doing men's and women's gymnastics events and I won the all around and I'm literally sitting here and everyone's like, you're so amazing. And I literally looked at all of them and I said, no, he is so amazing. And this is his story. And like everything he's done through me is his glory. And so I feel so lucky that he chose me to show the world what is possible when we believe and have faith. Um, and you truly can accomplish anything you set your mind to. And all those excuses we use, they're just you just have to put them to the side and let him do his work through you.
And that sounds amazing, and that feeling, even just your description of that gave me goosebumps. It must be so amazing to be at that point. But can you speak to people who are kind of in the waiting? You talked about how
Yes.
there was a period of time, years before you made your return to gymnastics and before you realized that you even had that option. And I think sometimes the waiting can be what really gets us and we start to get discouraged. Um, where did you see God show up during the waiting? Did it feel like he was silent, or did you sense him? Did you feel his guidance, feel his hand? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I absolutely felt his hands because, like a lot of people said, my gosh, you kept applying to American Ninja Warrior for 4 years, or like he's always given me this sense of like, this is what I have planned for you, and you just have to trust me. And so every time that I've really struggled and been like, what am I doing? Or like, I've just had this, he's given me this piece of like, just trust me, just trust me. And then he also gives me this feeling of like, wait till you see how good it's going to be when you do accomplish all your dreams. And then now that he's shown me how good that feels, that's why I love doing things like this and talking to you, because I want everybody to know like it's all worth it. For 14 years, I was not active, right? I went from an athlete, I slept on a heating pad for 14 years. Like I was in chronic pain. And if anybody's dealt with that, it is awful. And I truly, to this day, even the only reason I got through that without fusing my spine or doing dramatic things was because of my faith and just trusting and trusting and trusting and knowing that there was a bigger plan involved. Um, and that is when my best friend was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. That was probably my biggest wake up call because I did feel like time was infinite and I just like someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that. And then when she got that and she was my same age, it was like, wait, tomorrow is not promised. Like if I've got these dreams that God's put in my heart, I've got to go do this. Um And the other example I give is like, we are rowing the boat, right? So we need to get up and do the actions the best that we can, but God is steering our boat. So I think that's the other thing. There's a lot of peace in that, knowing that like you're going to do what you can. He's going to steer it the direction he does. And you just have to trust him and have patience with that and know that you're going in the direction he wants you to. And then when things don't go the direction that you do want, you know it's his plan, right? So as opposed to going, but God, like, I wanted to hit the buzzer on American Ninja Warrior, or I would have loved that phone call 2 years earlier. He's like, no, no, no. I was testing you. I was preparing you. There's just so much involved in the journey and the waiting that you need for when he does bless you with the dream come true moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so if all of those experiences had not happened, I mean, would you even have the testimony that you have today? How has God used those setbacks to really give you a platform, to use for his good today?
Yeah. And I was just talking to my husband about this because God is so good. I hope that's what you get from listening to me today. He's so good. And I look at every single part of my story. I wouldn't change one part of it. And there were some extremely dark moments in my life. And I would change none of it because I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I look back and like, okay, so even when I started doing Ninja Warrior, if I got in the call the first year, I may have never gone back to gymnastics, right? Because I was like, oh, I made my dream come true. Cool. And it would, and then also it wouldn't have felt the way it felt because it took 4 years that changed that. And then when I didn't get it the second year, then I decided to compete and add on men's events. And then I decided, oh, I'm going for the decathlon. Now I'm going to add on and do the omnithon. So all those years of me waiting for this other dream was pushing me towards these other dreams that I did. Like, it's just so cool where you look back and you see his hand on everything. And then I never knew me failing on the course of American Ninja Warrior was going to open more doors than ever me doing well on that show because it was more relatable. And he was using me as the platform to show everybody that winning is different for everybody. And so it's really cool in all the moments, even the moments that I felt were failures or disappointments or redirections. And that was the other thing I started to realize: rejection is not rejection, it's redirection.
Oh.
I like to picture, like a map quest when you
Wait, say that
go.
one more time because that is really worth somebody pausing and rewinding and listening to again.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. And before we jump back in, can I ask you something? If this podcast has encouraged you, challenged you, or reminded you that God is at work in your life, would you take just a second to like, comment, or share it? In Matthew 28, Jesus gives us the Great Commission. He tells us to go and tell the world about him. Not all of us are called to a stage or a microphone, but every single one of us is called to share. When you share this episode, leave a review, or tag a friend, that's your way of going and telling. You never know who in your circle needs hope today. So if this podcast is blessing you, please help me spread the message. Let's go and tell together. Thank you for listening. Have you ever felt unqualified, overlooked, or like your struggles disqualified you from leading? I wrote The Unlikely Leader for you. Throughout Scripture, God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Moses didn't see himself as a leader. Noah was laughed at for building the ark. Joseph was betrayed, sold into slavery, and forgotten before he rose to lead a nation. Again and again, God chooses the unlikely. In the book, The Unlikely Leader, I share how the very struggles you've walked through, the heartbreak, the setbacks, the seasons of doubt, aren't disqualifications. They're preparation. Your adversity may be the very thing that God uses to shape you into the leader someone else desperately needs. This book will also guide you on how to discover your very own spiritual gifts. Everyone has a mission and God-given spiritual gifts. If you've ever wondered whether God could use you, This book will remind you he already is. Grab your copy of The Unlikely Leader today from Amazon.com and step into the calling you never saw coming.
So rejection is really just redirection. There is no rejection, right? And so the example I like to use is on a map quest. When you go the wrong route, what does MapQuest or what does your mapping system do? It redirects you. It doesn't say, oh my gosh, you failed, turn around, this doesn't work. There's just redirecting you. And I think that so many of us look at, rejection or failures and are like, oh, I guess this isn't what we're doing. And they just quit, right? It's so easy to quit. But you just have to look at it as like, okay, God's redirecting me this way. And then maybe someday I'll get directed back to the dream that I want, but maybe he has a bigger door and a cooler opportunity over here for me, And so, there's also, I saw the funniest thing where they had like this little plane pull up and it's like, this is the plans that I thought God had for me. And then this giant jetliner pulls up and it's like, actually, this is God's plan for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't think we really understand that when we trust him and have faith, he can do incredible things in our lives.
I mean, I don't know who doesn't need to hear that. I do.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I've seen something similar, like, with the meme, kind of like with the little girl with the little teddy bear, and then Jesus is there with the giant bear, like behind his back. He's got God-sized plans. And we just, our simple minds just have these, these little human-sized plans. But, how rewarded are we when we trust and we're obedient and we wait patiently? It's just so hard to do.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to do. I know. And I'm a pretty stubborn person. So I'm the persistence and it's hard. And the coolest thing that God had me do, even on the Ninja Warrior thing, was he had me share the whole thing. So when I applied the first year, I shared it. I applied the second year, I shared it. So everybody was part of the journey with me. So when I finally got the call 4 years later, it was like we all got the phone call. And that was a really vulnerable moment for me, though, because people will say, what if you never got the phone call? And I was like, well, God just told me to trust him. So if I had never got the phone call and never got that opportunity, then that was what he wanted me, was to help other people that don't get the phone call too. So when you look at it from that perspective, it just really changes everything. And the other cool thing on Ninja Warrior was there were a lot of people in the back that didn't do well, and they decided that they weren't even going to post about them being on the show. Like, I'm just pretend like I wasn't on the show because I didn't do well. And then after they saw how I responded to how I did, they all were calling me saying, oh my gosh, wait, so people are still celebrating you? And I was like, well, yeah. And so then they started to post, and that was kind of cool too. And how you were saying earlier about it's how you react. It's like the little kid that falls down and skins their knees. If they jump back up and go, oopsie, and they keep walking, that's how everybody around them is going to,
Mm-hmm.
react. And so that's what I always tell people too, is like, when you fall, you just gotta, it's just a bump in the road, get up and keep going. And it's all about your attitude. And I'll always choose gratitude. That's the other thing, is every single thing that he does for me, I'm never going to sit here and complain. Like, I just am grateful for everything he does in my life.
And that kind of attitude is contagious too, because like you said, the other competitors, they started taking note and then embodying that same attitude. So kudos to you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you had spoken about a couple of people or your friend who had influenced your walk a little bit. And I wondered if you'd talk about that. Is there anybody who has influenced your walk with Christ, and what kind of impact has that had?
Yeah. So my walk with Christ, like, it's really interesting because I actually attended church my whole life. But it was a checkbox. We went every Sunday, but I didn't have a relationship with him. If I'm totally honest, it was just what we did growing up. And even out of college, I didn't go to church, didn't really open my Bible, wasn't really a part of it. And then even when I had my first child, I did MOPS, like it's a mothers of preschoolers at our church and so forth. But I just didn't have a deep relationship with him. But I always felt the nudging, you know what I mean? And it was really interesting because when I decided to be baptized, it was, like I said, my friend was diagnosed with terminal cancer, but I'd felt for a long time, we were going to church, checking the box, but I felt like I wanted to give my life to him. I was baptized as a baby, but like I wanted to be reborn. And so I would literally watch the baptisms and I would feel myself being pulled, almost running down the aisle, jumping in the water. And I was like, okay, I'm obviously not going to do that. But then I literally was crying one service and I was like to my husband, we need to be baptized. I want to be baptized. Do you want to be baptized with me? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, babe. And so then we decided to be baptized together. And then that was when like everything changed, for sure. And then now, you know, obviously I have that personal relationship with him, but it's really interesting when you say if somebody individually having an impact, it was more him nudging me. Kind of funny enough, when I look back, it was like I always felt his presence of like, I want to have a relationship with you. I don't want you to feel this emptiness and this loneliness. Um, and so I felt a lot of darkness a lot of my life. I struggled with anxiety and depression, and I felt, as dark as it's, I felt the devil a lot in my life. And then that moment of when he came to me in the closet when I had, you know, postpartum depression so severely, and then being baptized, it's just like his light just completely engulfed me. And ever since then, now it's just a part of who I am. And so he's with me every single day, and I literally feel like a completely different person.
I can tell just by talking to you that it's
Yeah.
it's part of who you are, really. And I think that's a realization that a lot of people don't come to soon enough, just that our lives here are finite. And then, you know, that realization that you're like, okay, we have like, I don't know, maybe 80, 90 years if we're lucky, like on this earth. But when you realize that like you're planning for eternity, you start thinking differently. And so whether it was the realization of your friend's terminal diagnosis, or whatever it was, I think that's something that we need to be reminded of often. And our pastor at my church today, he brought it out again today. He has this kind of symbolic thing that he shows us with this really long rope that extends. It's like infinitely on both ends. And there's this little piece of blue tape in the middle. And he holds up the blue tape and he says, like, this is your time here on earth. But, you know, we need to start thinking about this. And he holds up the rest of the rope, like eternity, you know, and that's where we need to invest. So thank you for sharing that. If you could share maybe one Bible verse or promise or biblical story or biblical truth that has carried you through tough seasons, what comes to mind? What would that be?
You know, it's really interesting because I know I can't even think of the Bible verse now that you're putting me right on the spot. I would say the biggest thing that so the biggest thing I felt through my entire walk with him, is that bring more people to him. That's how I feel. I feel like shining my light in the world and doing what I'm doing just to bring more people to him.
Yeah, make
And the
heaven
thing,
crowded, right?
yes, make heaven crowded. That's probably my favorite thing. Matthew, when, you know, all things are possible, you know, nothing's impossible with him. I always think of that verse, but also like faith over fear is actually my logo, that I had on the show. And it's a girl in a handstand on a cross and it says faith over fear. That's been huge for me because I feel like you do have that moment, you know, faith, or fear, forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And I feel like that is what I always am choosing every single day, is I'm not going to let the devil pull me down. I'm going to rise. And the other like big thing, I guess, biblically, I always think to myself, and I hope everybody takes that from this story, is it really is his timing, it's his plan, it's his story, and it's his glory. And if you look at that through every single thing that you go through on a daily basis, and that's your focus, then really nothing that you go through is going to, you know, if that's your focus, then you know everything's going to be okay because it's his plan.
So many
So I
little
would,
nuggets
yeah.
of wisdom there.
Yeah, so there's a lot, like, so it's interesting. There's never been like an actual Bible verse that I've always turned to. It's actually more of just knowing it's his story, it's his glory. Yeah, so it is kind of interesting because I know a lot of people are like, well, this exact verse is how I live my day to day. And I'm like, it's more just the bigger picture of I'm the light. I want to bring more people to him, and to always choose him over fear and choose him over the world.
Mm.
So, whatever I do, it's to bring him glory. And so that's hard sometimes, right? Because I think we're in a world of self-serving. And I definitely take a step back and go, but it's not about me. It's like, what opportunities do I have tomorrow? Every morning I wake up and I think about, who can I serve? Who can I help? And how can I spread the gospel and bring more people to him?
And you definitely are with your testimony. If you could go back and talk to yourself during a low point, or maybe it's speaking to someone who's listening and they're in at a low point or going through a storm, what would you say? What would you say to them?
You're not being buried, you're being planted.
Mm.
Because it feels like, I'm getting chills even saying that, because I felt like I was being buried. And if anybody's gone through extreme depression, like postpartum depression, it truly feels like the darkness is taking over you, and you really can't see the light, and you feel like you're being buried. But if you can think of it as being planted, and you're a beautiful plant and you're going to sprout out, I just think it changes everything.
I love that. And there was something really poignant, I think, that you said in your the questions that you filled out for the podcast. You said, because comebacks are not about age, they are about courage, and courage begins with Christ. I love
Yep.
that.
Yeah, 100% it does. Every time I compete, I I always say faith over fear right before I go. As cheesy as it is, I always say, Jesus, take the wheel. And it's really cool because when I do slip up on a routine or don't do well, like I said, it's really, he gave me the courage to be there. And like I said, however it ends up was his plan. And I just want people to have that feeling that I get. You have this feeling through him of just complete peace. And if you ask him to give it to you, he will. And no matter what storm you go through or anything, if you have his peace, it changes how you face everything in your life.
Absolutely. And Angela, as we kind of wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share, especially how any listeners can follow your journey? I know that you speak publicly. Do you have any upcoming events? And we'll definitely share any links or contact information in the show notes, but what should we expect from you?
Yeah, so a lot of my stuff is online because it's easiest. People can see me online. So I'm on Facebook and I'm also on Instagram. Yes, I'm on TikTok and YouTube, but I am 45, so I don't spend as much time on there. Facebook, mostly Angela Fuller. And Instagram, it is Colorado Fitness Chick. So COLO Fitness Chick is that. And so I would say the biggest thing, I always tell everybody from my story is dream big. Like, even if you're 45 years old, like you have no idea what you're capable of. That dream that kind of haunts you at night, the dream that you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to do this. Go do it and start before you're ready, and then never give up. So even if that dream is not happening in the year or two time frame that you had, keep going, because I promise you it's going to be worth it. And it truly is never too late. I mean, you see people doing incredible things in their 80s, 90s, 70s. There's no timeline. And the fact that people think we expire doing sports, or there's a timeline. There is no timeline. So just throw that all out. Who cares what the world expects of you? You get to do what you want to do. It's your life. And so I would say so basically I'm redefining what's possible at any age. And I hope that's what you see when you see my story.
And that's a message for everyone. I know it is for me. Angela, thank you so much for sharing your truly incredibly inspirational story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And if you're listening, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Unlikely Leader. I'm so excited for what God is going to do through the stories that we'll share together. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Podbean. And if you'd like to learn more about my book, The Unlikely Leader, you can visit the link in the comments to purchase on Amazon. You can email me at theunlikelyleader2023@gmail.com. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, podcast, or you know someone who would, please fill out or share the Google form in the comments. We're also going to share all links and contact information for Angela in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for listening. And if it's okay with you, Angela, I'm going to close us in prayer.
Yes, I would love that.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for Angela joining us today and sharing her powerful story. Thank you for everything that you've done in her life, in the waiting, and helping to turn her setbacks into a comeback that speaks to so many people and is so inspirational to all of us. And Lord, we just pray that you'll continue to use her and her platform and her testimony to inspire people so that they see that nothing is impossible through you. In your name, Lord, we pray. Amen.
Amen.